The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, religion, and education. We'll explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is basketball legend and coach Floyd Layne from City College. Hi, Floyd.
Hi, Roscoe.
Well, recently Madison Square Garden had a celebration of the 10 greatest moments in Madison Square Garden history, and your 1950 City College basketball double championship was there, and you represented them. How did that feel?
Well, it was a once-in-a-lifetime feeling.
It was a once-in-a-lifetime event.
And a feeling, a great feeling. And after all these years, and to be rated as the #1 team, you know, there was a countdown as you went down the line, and we were still sitting there after 3-2, so it looked like we might be in it. And it was really great, an outstanding event.
Well, for the audience who wasn't around at that time, tell us a little about why that was so important.
Well, at that time, back in the days, we were...
This was 1950, right?
1950. We were a Division I team that played all over the country and played most of our home games in Madison Square Garden. Our season was just a so-so type season. It was 18-5 season, something like that. And we were just invited, because of us being a home team, CCNY as a home team in the Madison Square Garden, we were pretty low on the totem pole. So we were picked number 16 or 17 to play the #1 championship team. So we weren't rated very highly at that time.
This was in the National Invitation Basketball Tournament?
The NIT, which was the major tournament in those days, back in those days. And that was the major tournament. And we were put together with the San Francisco Dons, who had won the tournament the previous year. So we were kind of a throw-in type team. And we came fortunate enough to be successful and beat the Dons. And then we had to move on.
Well, how'd you do that? I know City College was known for passing and cutting. Tell me how we did that.
#1, I think the tribute has to go to assistant coach Bobby Sands. He was the scout. He did most of the scouting of the teams, and he scouted San Francisco team and gave us a pretty thorough rundown of just the kinds of things that they would be doing. And we did a lot of switching in that particular game as far as defense was concerned. We were manning them, but then we would, whenever they crossed, we just stay in the place and take whoever came in that area. And I think that cut them off a little bit. And it surprised them quite a bit also. What we did was we were a fast break club, and we ran a lot. So I think that kind of caught them off guard also. And of course we had some excellent players like Ed Roman and Ed Warner and Erwin Dambrot, and they could all really put it in the basket. So,
now, what was your role on the team?
I was as a guard. I was a guard, not a point, not a shooting, but a guard.
At that time, they didn't have that differentiation.
No,
right.
You have to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
And I handled the ball quite a bit, but we all handled the ball because we had a motion type offense.
Cut and
pass, go without the ball, give and go. So that's what we did primarily, and we seemed to be pretty successful with it.
What was the final score?
I believe it was 69-45.
Yeah, you really blew them off, right?
We did pretty good, yeah.
And then after you won the NIT championship, then you won the NCAA championship, which, as you say, wasn't as big as the NIT at that time.
But I should point out to you that in the second game, after San Francisco, we were scheduled to play, and we did play, the great Kentucky team. Mm-hmm. And that was the famous coach Adolph Rupp. And that team was really rated as a top team, even though San Francisco had won the tournament. But Kentucky was supposed to take it all.
And that was, at that time, Kentucky was all white.
Yes.
And City College was one of the few really integrated teams.
Yes, that's true. And there was quite a bit of talk about how about us them not wanting to speak to us or anything like that when we got on the floor and all that. But that really didn't take place. We just went about taking care of business right off the bat. And we started off from the very beginning. The first tip we got, we went out on a fast break. We laid it up, and we never looked back after that.
What was the score of that game?
That was 89-50.
Well, you really blew them off.
Yeah. We were running all the way.
Now, when you got to the NC2A, then they knew that you were going to be good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how did that tournament go?
Well, they looked out. We came against a tough, I think it was Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. And they were very tough. That was a nip and tuck, really a nip and tuck game. And they put up a really tough zone against us. And we just had to keep moving the ball, and we wound up winning, I think it was 56-55.
And so that was the only time that one team had won both tournaments,
yes.
the NIT and the NC2A. Now, which of those games becomes one of the 10 greatest moments in Madison Square Garden history?
I think the tournament. I think what they were voting on was the winning the two tournaments. Actually, but I don't know if there's a single game. I think they may. The game that they really focus on is that Kentucky whipping, 89-50 whipping.
And that had some social significance because Kentucky and Rupp were from the South and didn't have any black players, and may have made some disparaging remarks about some of the black players.
Yes, so they say they'll never beat our boys or things like that.
Now the black players on the team were you and Ed Warner.
Yes.
And Joe Gallagher.
Correct.
Was Leroy Watkins on that team?
Correct. Right.
That's 4 out of 10,
That's
right?
4. Yeah.
That's quite an experience.
Yes, it was a great. But we really had a great coach. We had a great camaraderie between the players.
Oh, your great coach was Nat Holman,
original Celtic.
Yeah,
the original Celtic, and he was a stickler for movement. You know what the Celtics do: move the ball, move without it, hit the open man, and run, and that's what we did.
Now that was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, 50? Yeah, 50 years ago.
More, 60.
More than that, 60. Now, has basketball changed that much, and how has it changed?
It has changed.
It definitely has changed.
It definitely has changed.
More people know about it, for one thing.
It has changed in that respect also. But the focus in this day and age is on individual talent. It's more on individual talent. And I think the best idea you can get from watching the recent NCAA tournament that just was played. Now, those teams that came out there, the Cornells, the Butlers, and the Baylors of the world, were not highly rated.
But they were teams.
But they were teams. Groups that they weren't individual groups, they were a team group. And of course, it speaks for itself how far they got in the tournament, because Butler was right there right at the end against a very good Duke team that was a team.
But of course, the other thing that's changed is the size. You were considered to be tall when you played.
I was one of the first big guards in the.
How tall were you when you played?
About 6'3.5", almost 6'4".
Yeah, there you go.
But
and now you'd be short
I'm
today. Now, part of that is genetics, and part of it is the fact that coaches take the time to teach tall people how to move, how to shoot, and so on. So in the old days, when you had a 7-footer, or somebody like George Mikan who was 6'10", they didn't move very well. They put them close to the basket. They just keep dumping the ball in there.
That's right.
Now they can move. They can move and run, and that's because of the training that occurs.
That's true. Very true. A lot of individual fundamentals are being stressed, but a lot of defense is not being stressed.
Now let's talk about that. Now, tell me, what are the elements of defense that are not being stressed?
Seeing the man and seeing the ball, moving your feet.
Moving your feet.
Moving your feet. Being aware at all times. Hands. So many players play with their hands down. You know, talking on defense. All those critical points. Knowing what's going on around you. Knowing what time it is, as the youngsters say in this day and age. Knowing what's going on at all times. Seeing your man, seeing the ball.
Now, is that the lack of defense because of poor coaching, or because the players don't follow what the coaches tell them to do?
I think it's a combination. It can be a combination. Some coaches do it, and some. But if a coach wants you to do that, that's what he insists upon. That's what he's got to make you do. I've had the unfortunate experience since our playoff game, when we got into the playoffs, we weren't prepared for the playoff game against DeWitt Clinton, and some of the players went away during the Regents Week, and that's very important. The emphasis should have been to be there for the scrimmages. We scrimmaged Manhattan Center, John F. Kennedy, and some of the old timers came in. And we didn't have our main players there. 3 or 4 of them weren't there because they had gone away. Now, when they came back, they weren't really ready to go at it.
Now, we're talking about Floyd Layne, the coach, because your distinguished career goes far beyond your outstanding work with the City College team and that history. You have coached at the college level, the high school level, the AAU level, the team level, the community level. Which of those coaching venues have you enjoyed the most?
The combination of coaching at City, coming back and coaching at City College and winning and traveling with the team to different Division I schools, and the professional area where I had the Pro-Am team with some really great players, the Archibalds and the Cowanses and the Monroes and Johnny Mathises and all of those players. And coaching at City College with Richie Silvera and the rest of those kids that
How many years did you coach at City College?
I think it was 15 years, about 15 years.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you stop?
Well,
they stopped you.
What's interesting about it is that always thinking about moving on and moving forward as far as City College was concerned. I was in contact with one of my players that I played on the Globetrotters briefly. When I came out of the service, I played briefly with the Globetrotters before I returned to school. And a fellow named Joe Bourne was working at the UN as a security officer. He met a gentleman by the name of Charles Manyang, who was a person that was a representative from the Sudan. He had a cousin who was 7 feet tall and played for the national Sudanese team. So the conversations went, and he wanted to come to the States. Joe told him he had a coach that could really, that could coach him and maybe get him into the school. He was ready for college. And that's what took place. We got him a visa to come to the States. We had him ready to come to City College, and he was not accepted because he had limited skills as far as the English language was concerned. This young man, we went back and forth with this young man, and his cousin brought his cousin in from the Sudan, also a fellow named Edwin Bona. He was 6'8", 7-footer and a 6'8"er. We weren't able to get both of them in, and I won't go into details about getting them in. I passed them on to a good friend of yours, Howie Evans, who was assistant coach at Fordham University. Howie spoke to Tom Penders. They got them into Fordham University, and the rest is history. They both graduated in 4 years, and they made Fordham just a very formidable team.
Now, you currently coach at George Washington High School in the Public School Athletic League, and you've been coaching there for years, so you've coached several teams in the high school division.
Well, not that long at George Washington. I've been there 5 years, but I was at Prospect Heights in Brooklyn for 10 years.
They know about you.
Yes.
The basketball community knows that's why you're a legend. Now, why do you keep coaching at this time in your life, other than the fact you just love the game?
Because I love the game. I think that's the answer.
Well, there's more to it than just loving the game. You love working with the young people.
That's true. Very true. Well, you know that, as you can recall, when we were together, we worked at the Morris High School playfield in the summer.
That's where we met.
We met there along with Norman Skinner and Chet Pierce, and we used to issue the the free lunches to the youngsters, and we were all very much always interested in those youngsters. And plus we have the Forest House contact with George Gregory.
First black All-American basketball player back in the 30s.
And a great mentor. And So that's been our lot for all these years.
But I heard you say sometime a few years ago that the youngsters were hard to coach. Do you still believe that?
They are hard to coach if you allow them to do what they want to do.
Okay. Well, how do you get them to do what you want them to do?
By just stepping out there and setting out my standards, just running my drills and running everything that I want. And if they don't do what I want them to do, then they don't play as much. And if they don't play according to my system, I will, for the first time, tell them that they're not in my plans for the following year.
Tell me, what is your system? The Floyd Layne system.
My system is, on offense, is hit the open man.
Well, in order to hit the open man, somebody has to be running around to get free.
That's right.
My system guard around forward, something like that.
My system is, you move the ball, you weave the ball, you screen.
You do a weave.
We weave, we
pass
screen.
And cut.
Against man-to-man, against man-to-man defenses. Right. Pass and cut, go what we call go back door, screen for each other. Look, if we have the personnel, of course you have to play according to your personnel also. And if you've got a big man, and he can do something down underneath, you've got to get the ball down inside. So we learned how to feed the pivot also. So you go according to your personnel. And it seems that lots of the youngsters are not that big these days. So on that level,
youngsters in the city are not that big. And what happens is the tall ones and the more talented ones get recruited to go to private schools, go out of state.
Right.
But you work with the city kids.
Yes.
And the city basketball is still a great game.
I agree.
And the champions, who won the championship this year?
Boys and girls.
Boys and girls. And with Ruth Lovelace,
she did
the first woman coach.
Job. Yes, and I know her well because when I was at Prospect Heights, we played each other. We were in the same division, and she's just a terrific person and a really very good coach.
Now, and because she is a woman, people say, well, why would she be coaching boys or men? But coaching is coaching, whether you're coaching men, women, or kids.
That's right. If you coach, if you've got that game, if you've got those skills, and you've got it up in your head, then you just take part in it. I coached many women's clubs at FIT.
I know you did.
Yeah. So, but as long as they're ready to go at it, you know what you're doing. That's what counts.
Now, what are the best basketball drills that you use to develop skills?
Dribbling drills, passing drills, fast break drills, fast break, two-hand chest pass drills, over the head drills, all kinds of drills that build your ability to pass the ball and dribble the ball. Then the layup. Then of course, when you're talking about scoring and etc., it's the layup drills. Naturally.
Well, what about shooting? Because everybody likes people who shoot from a long distance and make a lot of shots. What about that?
Well, you can live by the jump shot and you can die by the jump shot.
But if you have somebody who's good, you can win by the jump shot. Now,
True.
what does it take to develop that type of skill?
Practice.
Practice.
Practice. I can safely say that because sitting in front of you is a person that really wasn't that good a shooter. But practicing and practicing. As time went on and as I developed and grew older, I learned to knock it down pretty well too. Also, so it's practice.
Well, one of the things that they say about the city game is many of the kids learn on the playground and don't get certain basic skills, but they learn how to shoot, they learn how to drive.
Right.
How do you harness that?
By giving them those fundamental drills that I was speaking about. By giving them, if they're receptive of those drills, then they practice it and do what they're instructed to do. So you have to have those in your fingertips, and you have to pass it on to them. And these fellows that put it through their legs, they're meaningless efforts, putting it through their legs and going nowhere.
It takes a lot of skill to do it, but it does help the game.
It's very nice, but it achieves nothing. And our number one purpose is to achieve score and get to the basket. And therefore, you want to put that ball down in front of you, go past your man, right or left, either way. So putting it through your legs is very nice for the crowds who clap and see, but it's accomplishing nothing.
Now, let's talk about what's happening to minority youth, particularly in sports and in basketball. Apparently, there's a new trend where the very good players go to college for a year to get ready for the professionals and then go. And a lot of the players who are not as good don't pay attention to their academics because they think they too are going to go. What is your observation as to how that has affected the way in which young people relate to their schoolwork?
It's a very sad issue, Roscoe. It's really very troubling. And as you know, I've given you an article in regards to a young man who's leaving in a high school here in New York, who went to Cincinnati, and he has left and gone right after one semester, and I don't know if he's completing that semester. Mm-hmm. He's opted for the draft. And once you hire an agent also, then that really finishes you.
Well, you lose your eligibility when you hire an agent.
Eligibility.
But then the question is, if somebody's grown up in limited economic circumstances, they have this great talent, should they be going to college or should they go right to the pros?
They should go. If their talent, their economic ability has been limited, and it's been limited up to this point, but they are still alive and kicking. And while they're alive and kicking, they should go to college and get their college education, because we don't know what could take place. God forbid, we don't know what could take place. So therefore, once you have your college education, and that's better than 2 to 3 years at least, you can always fall back. God forbid if something happens to you as far as your injury is concerned, you can always fall back on that college education and practice whatever your profession is. But once you're finished, you're finished.
But you're right in that sense, that when someone can handle the college education, but because so many of these young people from the time they were 10 years old have been catered to, haven't learned academic skills, can't really master the work. They have the intelligence, but they don't have the skill. And many of the coaches do not encourage that. There was an interesting story in the Times about Xavier University in the NC2A, where there was a nun who insisted that the players go to study.
Yes.
And they have a graduation rate of almost 100% of the kids who get to be seniors. What do you do when you work with young people who think that they're going to be superstars? Most of them obviously are not. If 1 out of 10,000 makes it, that's a lot.
That's right.
What do you do? How do you talk to these young people?
Well, I just say something similar to what we're talking about, and tell them about their education and how important it is. I'm very fortunate to have a gentleman who's my assistant who worked in the college office at when I first arrived at George Washington High School, and he's a stickler for getting all the information as far as the grades are concerned. We refer them. I use the tutoring services, and PSAL has assigned people throughout the city now that are working with the athletes, and it's going to start this next semester. So I just always talk to them about the fact that your education is very important.
What percent of your players go to college?
I would say it's a good 75 to 80%.
And they go to community college, they go to city university, they go to state university,
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
And have you ever had the occasion of one of your players who went to college and got a profession and came back and told you that he or she was a lawyer or a doctor or architect? Have you had that happen to you?
Maybe not on the lawyer-doctor category, but I've had quite a few of them that have gone into profession like psychology and teaching, etc. And they've always come back and said how happy they were that I stuck behind them and pushed them to get their education and get their degree, because obviously they're not playing professional ball.
And most of them, even the larger colleges, are not really going to play professional ball.
That's true.
It's about learning the teamwork and the camaraderie and the like.
That's
but if you were to change the system today, how would you change the system in terms of the way in which college athletes and high school athletes are treated?
They certainly would have to, well, of course they must maintain their grades, but it's got to be a certain emphasis on the fact that they've got to, the tutoring, et cetera, has got to come along. The basic fundamentals as far as the courses are concerned. They should not be catered to. I believe they certainly shouldn't be catered to. And I think that the colleges that stress the academics, we know the different colleges that coming in there, you must be academically sound. Mm-hmm. And I think they should be given this preparatory work to make sure that when they come into, well, they have the SATs, et cetera, all those things, should be more emphasized in the high schools so that when they apply for the colleges, they'll have to be sound. And then we have to follow up in the colleges with making sure that they maintain their grades, that their grades, they're closely watched as far as their subject material is concerned, and that they've been taken care of as far as their tutoring is concerned, if they need it.
Well, the John Hunter Memorial Camp Fund is going to honor you and honor me, recognizing you for your outstanding leadership and recognize me for being around. And so we will be celebrating Floyd Layne, basketball legend and coach. Thank you again to be with us on African American Legends. Take care, Floyd.
Thank you, Roscoe.